Jarrah.com.
And welcome to True Talk. This is your host, Samar Jarrah. My co-host and I will be having a very interesting show for you today. And let me just make sure that my co-host is online, Ahmed.
Hi, Samar. I'm here.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, Ahmed, aren't we lucky that we live in Florida and it's not 100 degrees and we have ACs everywhere? Do you know that people in Europe, in their homes, they have no ACs and now they are rushing to buy fans?
Yeah, I've been to Europe. I was always surprised when I go to, like AC is not necessarily a standard feature in homes. It's actually kind of in the more luxurious or more expensive homes, but it's standard in America. It has to be in Florida. In fact, if it wasn't for AC, Florida would not be even inhabitable. I think that was one of the main things to drive people moving to Florida. They used to not live this far south. It's because of the air conditioning, and we know how that contributes to the environment as well. So
yeah. But
yeah, it may not be 100 degrees outside, but with the humidity, it often feels even, hotter than that.
Yes, but the interesting thing, Ahmed, is that in Florida, you don't feel it because the malls and shops and coffee shops, no matter how small they are air conditioned, but not these in Europe. You can be really sweating in a restaurant or in a small cafe in Europe. But so we are lucky.
Yeah. Well, we are lucky and we're unlucky. I mean, they also, oftentimes also in Europe, when the sun goes down, it does cool off and you don't have that humidity. Depends, of course, where you are. If you're in Greece, it's different. But if you're in Germany or if you're in, Switzerland or some of these other countries, it can be much cooler at night as well. So you have beautiful evenings. You can walk outside. Here, I try to take a walk outside at like 10 or 11 o'clock at night, thinking that maybe it's cooler. It's the same. It's just like you're in a sauna, and it's like this choking feeling, and there's no wind. So, yeah,
I know we're going to be talking about serious issues, but because now on NPR they were discussing that Turkey and the U.S. will be playing, what do you think of these Europeans in particular doing these short videos on TikTok and then uploading it to Twitter and Facebook and going to places like Walmart and the other gigantic gas station, I don't know what they call it, Becky or Bex or something.
Buc-ee's.
Yeah. What do you think of how shocked they are? Have you seen these things?
Yeah, I've seen some of them. One person was at Popeyes. I mean, I know we're not supposed to talk about brands, but it's a popular fried chicken place. And he was surprised. I guess he was from Australia, and he was shocked that you can get so much food for, I forgot what it was, $6. And he was just like, how do they do it? How do they not go broke? And, so on one hand, they're surprised by how cheap fast food is. And while, we think it's expensive, and also they're fascinated by unlimited refills.
Yeah.
Something you don't have in Europe.
Or ice.
Or ice, unlimited ice machines. They're like, when you go to just about everywhere else in the world, when you ask for a drink, unless you ask for ice specifically, they will not bring it. And oftentimes, if you do ask for ice, it's like 2 cubes of ice. It's
and
not
it immediately melts. It happened to me in England.
It's not like a cup full of ice, and you don't have this fountain drinks that have unlimited choices and you can keep refilling. No, a refill, you got to pay for another drink. So they're fascinated about those things. In fact, in some places in Europe, even if you ask for like water, there's no courtesy cups for water. You have to get bottled water. So yeah, and then they're just shocked by how big things, supermarkets are massive. Everything is just big. Highways are huge.
Big
So yeah,
containers. I think they were like wondering why this jug of milk is this big and why the juice is this big. And then I think, Ahmed, the variety, like
yeah, the
60
variety.
kinds of chips.
Yeah, chips, cereals. It's, I mean, of course, it depends on where they come from, but yeah, they're being exposed to the nation that, basically consumes the most in the world and wastes. And I'm talking about America, our country. We have the most waste in the world and the most consumption, which some of these other countries, especially ones that are coming from poorer nations, they don't have those type of services or those the level of variety. And these tickets are not cheap. I mean, somebody did a cost analysis for somebody to attend, like, to travel here and attend, like, following their own team, for example. It would cost something like, 30 to
Oh,
$40,000
really?
in travel costs and hotels and tickets. The tickets are not cheap,
Wow.
and yeah,
Wow,
it's
what
people
if
are.
the team remains in the competition till the end? Because with the others, they just, I think this week is elimination week where teams
Well,
might go back.
this week it ends like the group. Um, every group has four teams, so each team has at least three games that they play, and they only take the top two teams from each group that proceeds to the next round. And in the next round, they start eliminating. You lose one game, you're out. So half the teams are going to be, dismissed or have to go, finish. And then the top two from each group will continue. But yeah, if they go to the end, it can get really expensive. And, the finals tickets are expensive. And of course, Egypt is also in the finals. So it's interesting to watch some of these bloggers and influencers that are coming
Yeah.
from Egypt, and they're kind of giving a preview of the America. One guy I saw, he posted a video of a police, stopping some car and, at gunpoint, telling people get out of the car and stuff, and they were like, fascinated by that. And one Egyptian blogger went to a mosque in America, and he was just sharing, and he was surprised by how religious the Muslims are in America. So more so than some places in Egypt, and how so it's interesting because a lot of times people overseas think America is just this country that's all about like Trump and invading the rest of the world and bombing different nations and going to war and supporting Israel. But of course, they don't see the other side of our country. Of course, all the beautiful places around America, because America is large, but also that there are so many different types of communities, including Muslim communities that are here, Muslim Americans that are thriving and growing. So yeah, it's really interesting from
Yeah,
different
because
perspectives.
I think 99% of what I am seeing is positive, people expressing fascination. And also, I think they did not know how kind the average American is, how supportive, how welcoming, and how, the interaction with the people. And when they close the streets, for instance, I think like the Egyptian team in Seattle, not the team, the fans, people were not upset, and they were cheering, although they didn't understand what the Egyptians were saying. And it was very nice of the Egyptians also to always be waving a Palestinian flag whenever there is an Arab fan group. They always have a Palestinian flag, but they were all met with welcoming gestures and kindness. And I'm very, very happy that they can see this side that you and I can, from living here, of course, and being American, that not all Americans are MAGA or what we see on TV or what we see, what Trump says. Last week, Ahmed, we had gentleman to explain about Iran, and we thought that that's it. The thing is signed, and then we find out that no, it's an endless game of wanting to bomb the S out of Iran, destroying the country, and then going to negotiations. But I really wanted to get your input on something else, Ahmed, because you follow local, not necessarily in Tampa and Florida, but in the U.S. elections and local elections. And you have campaigned and helped other people to campaign before. What did you think of this hysteria over 3 or 4 people that the mayor of New York, Mamdani, supported and won? Like, is this, maybe you can give our listeners a background on what happened in the elections in New York.
Well, in New York, this was a primary election that happened on Tuesday. It's not the general election, but because New York, so these districts are so much like they're basically Democratic districts. Majority of the times, the election is decided in the primary, not the general. Meaning, whoever wins the primary, they'll eventually become the winner of the general election, which will happen in November. And so the Democrat primary ends up being basically the real election. And on Tuesday 2 days ago, was their primaries. And there were 3, as far as congressional level, 3 members, 3 candidates defeated basically establishment candidates, meaning these are the favored politicians. 2 of them are actual incumbents that have been serving in Congress for a number of years. One of them was actually serving maybe 15 years and for 5 terms or something like that or more. And the other one, Goldman, had been there for a few years. Both of them establishment favorites. They're meaning that, they're supported by the Democratic leadership, by Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and others. And the ones that defeated them were, most of them were kind of not that well known. So basically that's what happened. But the big story is that Zohran Mamdani, the new mayor of New York, who's been there just for 6 months, had endorsed all 3 candidates and campaigned for them. And he not only endorsed those 3, but he also endorsed an additional 5 candidates that were not for Congress, but for other positions in the legislature in New York that also won. So basically everyone, he endorsed 8 people, all 8 won. And people are just saying, well, Zohran Mamdani is now the kingmaker in New York. Some people are calling it Mamdanistan. Is a playful word for New York City, saying, oh, it's no longer New York City, it's Mamdanistan, a play on, the countries that are, the end was stan, or which is a Persian word that means place, like Afghanistan, Pakistan, all these countries. So that now they're calling New York City Mamdanistan. And there's a level of hysteria. And it's not new. It's been happening ever since Zohran Mamdani won the primary 1 year ago. So 1 year ago, Zohran Mamdani won the New York City primary, defeating Andrew Cuomo, who was a favorite, establishment favorite, despite all his problems and despite having to resign from his position as governor, leaving in disgrace, and he returned. And despite that, they still got behind him, the Democratic establishment, and he lost the primary. Then he ran again as an independent against Mamdani. He lost a second time. So ever since Mamdani a year ago won that primary, there's just been hysteria in New York City, specifically by one group of people, the pro-Israel side, who have been sounding the alarm that somehow Mamdani is this jihadist, this terrorist, Hamas supporter, et cetera, et cetera. None of it, of course, is true. And now that he's won, he has one of the highest popularity ratings, or he's so popular in New York among voters, his approval rating is something like 80%. And people in New York are, happy with him. The voters are. So the voters came out again and they supported these candidates and they won. And then somehow his critics are saying somehow that Mamdani, who they claim is a communist, socialist, et cetera, radical leftist, is somehow hijacking and taking over the Democratic Party so they can destroy it. Well, who is the Democratic Party? Isn't the Democratic Party made up of voters? And that's his argument, saying, look, the voters voted for this. And that's who came out, and that's what they voted for, and that's what they want. And it's the voters who define what the Democratic Party is, not the establishment elite who are out of tune. And one of the things that became a huge litmus test in all of this is Israel, and where candidates stand on that. And one of the reasons that people have been, and we can get more into it, but it became basically a big test for voters where people stand on Israel. So years now after October 7th, and that's still having a huge impact on American elections here.
I want to go, Ahmed, to Brad Lander. I think he is Jewish, and some people say that he is, still a Zionist, supports the state of Israel, but he publicly mentioned several times that he was against the genocide in Gaza. And he won in the 10th district, which, according to what I'm reading, is that it is a majority, has one of the highest Jewish majority. And he was running against a Jewish person. And it's being framed as this is anti-Semitic. And out of all people, the host of Morning Joe said, no, this is not about anti-Semitism. You can't just keep blaming any win that this is because of anti-Semitism, because this guy is Jewish and he's never renounced his Judaism or his religion or even was against Israel. He's just against the genocide. And he said, I'm quoting here, if you want to blame anybody for what happened last night, you have to blame Benjamin Netanyahu. And what's the name of this guy, Joe, on the Morning Joe? Joe Scarborough. I'm quoting here Ahmed saying, which is quite interesting, the idea that you're going to be able to brutalize children and women in Gaza with bombing that looks indiscriminate on TV day in, day out for years, that you're going to be able to level half of Lebanon, and that you're going to be able to continue to allow thugs to run wild in the West Bank and brutalizing Palestinians, brutalizing Christians in Bethlehem, brutalizing Christians across that area along with Palestinian Muslims, especially Palestinian Muslims, blowing up Catholic churches in Gaza. You can blame all of this on Benjamin Netanyahu. Really, to see this be on mainstream media. But let me read to you, I don't know if you have this clip of Speaker Mike Johnson, who is like the guarantor of democracy and democratic process. And he said, Ahmed, there are many Mamdanis, like mini ninjas invading the country from outer space. It took me a while to figure out mini. There are many Mamdanis popping up all over the country. It's a dangerous thing. This is not a joke. We are in a fight right now to save the Republic, and every American needs to take this seriously. What do you think of the
save the Republic from who? Voters?
From mini Mamdanis.
No, I'm saying, how are these mini Mamdanis winning? It's not like they're conquering with violence. But what are they doing? They're running for office. And what is more American than running for office and being part of the democratic process and letting the voters vote for who they want? Unless Speaker Johnson is advocating for a type of democracy where they handpick who the candidates are and eliminate everyone else. This is America. Bring your ideas, bring your platform and your campaign, and let the voters decide. And in this situation, And the trend is that this is what the public wants. This is what voters want, at least in New York. What do they want? What are these candidates actually standing on? And again, Mamdani and Brad Lander and others did not bring in Israel as their issue. They didn't. That's not part of their platform. But AIPAC and the Israel pro-Zionist organizations are the ones that keep making it about Israel. So Mamdani, when he ran, he did not say anything. He did not have Israel on his platform. He had that he wants affordable housing, buses to be free and cheap, free and fast, and universal health care, universal child care. These are the things, affordability. These are the things that this wing of the Democratic Party is running on, and they're called Democratic Socialists. Now, of course, their critics are dropping the word democratic and just simply saying, oh, these are socialists. And even they're dropping that and saying, oh, these are straight up communists. Don't trust them. Wherever communists happened before, it failed. The difference is the candidates that Mamdani endorsed and they won, they all pledged not to take money from the billionaires. They're not, from corporate PACs, and they're not basically beholden to the political elites and the oligarchs. Unfortunately, and what they're saying, and voters seem to agree with them, that both the Republican and Democratic Party leadership and establishment are in the pockets of the billionaires and the oligarchs. And people don't really see much of a difference between the Republican establishment and the Democratic establishment, that they're basically working for the billionaire class. And on top of that, they're aligned with AIPAC and Israel. And AIPAC is funding both Republican and Democrat candidates that are pro-Israel. And they're shutting down and trying to defeat anyone who criticizes Israel. It's not about Jewish or not Jewish. Brad Lander, as you said, is a Jewish man who is proud to be Jewish and identifies as a liberal Zionist. And he's worked for years. His entire career has been for Jewish and liberal Zionist causes. He thinks and believes that that in order for Israel to exist and to be safe, they have to have a real democracy, and they cannot have, an occupation. He believes in the two-state solution idea. He did criticize, of course, strongly oppose and criticize the war in Gaza. He opposes even U.S. military aid that's going to Israel's military to continue the occupation, but he continues to back funding the Iron Dome. So he's not completely against all weapons to Israel. And he's even in opposition to the boycotts, the BDS movement, which is popular among, even Mamdani supports it, is popular among Palestinian activists and others and allies that say that until Israel gives up the occupation, they need to be boycotted and sanctioned, and even divestment not to invest in them. But despite all that, Mamdani agreed with him on some of the things, and he endorsed him. So he's not this somehow anti-Israel, anti-Semitic guy. The guy is as Jewish as it gets, as they come. And he was in a race against the incumbent, Dan Goldman, who's also Jewish. And it's a heavy Jewish district. But despite all that, the voters chose Brad Lander because the voters identify with him more and on his domestic agenda. But somehow they want to spin this and say, this is anti-Semitism and Israel's in danger. Well, the Israel of Netanyahu and the genocide and the ethnic cleansing and bombing all of its neighbors, that type of Israel and that agenda of genocide is in danger. However, a coexisting people as Jewish people are not in danger, and Jewish people in New York are not in danger. Despite what all this, the rhetoric is happening. In fact, New York seems to be doing better now than before Zoran Mamdani got elected.
Let me just remind our listeners they're listening to True Talk on WMNF 88.5 FM. My co-host and Ahmed discuss a lot of issues, including local and U.S. Elections, and not only the politics of the Middle East and the Arab world and the Islamic world. We have an interesting text that came under Florida law. Air conditioning is not required, but heat is. It seems like it's true. If you have an input, you can email dj@wmnf.org or call 813-239-9663. 813-239-9663. Texting is via 813-433-0885 and email dj@wmnf.org. Ahmed, I want to read a post by Megan McCain, and this is again in reflection after Brad won. And she says, to my beautiful Jewish friends in America, we love you. You are not alone. We are just as freaked out as you are and see with clear eyes exactly what is happening. But I want to go to, I think, John Fetterman. And if you know anything about this young lady, Darializa Avella Chevalier, she seems to have been irritated. Her winning irritated so many people. So here is U.S. Senator John Fetterman saying on X, anti-Israel, anti-America, anti-Western civilization. Why am I the only Democrat in the U.S. Senate that refuses to excuse this or defend any of those self-identified communists? So I don't know if you know anything about that.
John Fetterman.
Then, one thing.
he's so
Okay, just a second. And then one guy says, "Oh my God, she's gonna be in the Congress, and she will use the word inshallah." So if you can explain inshallah, because you are my Muslim guru explaining.
One thing I want to share is Darializa, actually, which many people don't know, is actually Muslim.
She converted, I think.
Yeah, she converted like 3 or 4 years ago. It's not, it's not her like main identity, but she is. And inshallah means God willing. I mean, people now, it's become so common that people even, Trump, I don't know if Trump ever used inshallah, but some politicians in the West sometimes say inshallah, which just means God willing. It's so frustrating that we still have to tell people that the word Allah just means God in Arabic. It's just such common sense, right? So that's a side point. We'll talk about that on another show. But John Fetterman, he lost his credentials, long ago. He is 100%. It seems like all he talks about, all he does is just work for Israel. He is like the Democrat version of Ted Cruz. And, so they have their champions, and they're basically, the mouth of Israel, and one of them is John Fetterman, especially on the Democratic side. It's not like they don't have enough, but he is the most vocal, even more than Chuck Schumer and others, and he's just belligerent. People are so frustrated, they want to kick him out of office, they want to get rid of him. Unfortunately, senators, they stay in office for 6 years. So unfortunately for those that don't like him. So, but definitely the next time he's up, there's going to be a huge campaign to get him out of office. And there's going to be a lot of money being spent, I'm sure, that when, I think he's up for re-election, of course, not in 2026, but I think 2028. So we'll see what happens there. But they are mobilizing. This was a huge defeat for AIPAC, what happened in New York. Not only the 3 candidates that are now going and joining Congress, the 3 politicians that are anti the genocide, anti the occupation. They're pro-Palestine. They're going to Washington, D.C. Of course, they still have a general election, but most likely, it's 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, they're going to win because they're very democratic. And they already, they got the Democrat prime nomination. Now they'll have a general election where they may have a Republican there, but the districts are so Democrat that it's always a Democrat that wins. And not only that, there are another 5 pro-Palestine politicians that are serving, for different offices in the state of New York that also won. So this is a pipeline, and this is a huge defeat for AIPAC because they spent a lot of money and people are rejecting them. AIPAC has become so toxic that even Republicans that are running are pledging not to take money from AIPAC. So AIPAC is figuring out different ways to funnel money to the same people using shell organizations that, are using just generic names to hide who they are until the election happens. But people are quick to discover that it's AIPAC behind this or different branches of AIPAC. And they're funding, again, on both sides. But the point that they're trying to do is purge anyone who's not 100% with Israel. And they're pumping so much money, which seems like it should be illegal, the amount of money that they're using. And despite all that, they lost in New York. So they're now mobilizing all their allies, all their people that they've been funding, so they can go out there and they can try to mislead the public about what this win in New York means, that somehow now it's being taken over by a bunch of anti-Semites in New York. Obviously, Brad Lander is Jewish himself, but people, far away may not know that. So that's the message, and that's what all these pundits, whether they're in the media, whether they're in politics, whether they're in academia, they're all repeating the same talking points.
I want to read, Ahmed, a post by Jewish Voice for Peace. They say, victory. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name correctly in Arabic, Aber, but to me it sounds like Abir Qawas, wins her Democratic primary for State Senate in District 12. Pro-Palestine candidates are sweeping NYC tonight. Palestine was on the ballot and won. Abir will be champion for Palestinian freedom in Albany. This is Jewish Voice for Peace action tweet. This is not like a Palestinian group or... like they work together in New York and elsewhere, candidates and grassroots. But when you look at our mainstream media, except for a few exceptions, you'd think that these two people don't work, don't coordinate, don't elect each other. And do you know anything about her? Is she Palestinian? And then this is a local election.
Who is she?
Aber Kawas.
Oh, Aber Kawas. She is Palestinian.
Okay.
She is the first Palestinian to win a primary election. And eventually, like I said, usually these that win the primary will become the winner in the general. And she would be the first Palestinian American to serve in the New York State Assembly, which is a huge deal. And she's very Palestinian. She's wearing her keffiyeh, this checkered scarf that's popular and, symbolic of the Palestinian people. Her mom is very Palestinian. She speaks Arabic. She's in some of her videos. So she's going to, the State Assembly in New York and will be there with her scarf and with her, Palestinian American identity. And this is the face. That's what's coming to the Democratic Party, and people are scared of it. They think somehow, well, you've been talking about the Democratic Party as a big, huge tent, and that it's welcoming to all these people. But somehow now when people, individuals, whether they're Palestinian or pro-Palestinian, somehow you want to conspire to keep them out. Well, this is America. America is changing, the public is changing, and the polling supports it. The majority of Americans now are against Israel and sympathize with the Palestinian. And it's freaking them out. And the media is not reflective of that. Where media is trying to make it seem like it's still 1985 and everybody is, with the pro-Israel side against the Palestinians.
Actually, Ahmed, I'm looking again at the feed on X, and it says the Washington Post, since September 2025, did Israel commit genocide in Gaza? And this is from the Washington Post and displayed on CNN. And it says, among Jewish Democrats, 52% say that yes, what Israel did in Gaza is genocide, and 39% said no. So if people have this in the back of their mind, or if if these polls are spread and talked about, then they will understand the result in this 10th district in New York. So things are changing, but when driving, I was listening to Surly Voices, and one of the hosts was saying that she is in the Democratic Party because, how can you, and I think she's a black woman, how can you, as a minority, she didn't say that, I'm paraphrasing, if you want to work within the system, you have to be either Democrat or Republican to help candidates or to run or to learn the ropes. So in the Democratic Party, people are very disappointed in some young people like AOC, that they are as if calculating the future and seeing they're still with the old guard. So these young people, and Mamdani, I think that's the challenge, Ahmed, that they are very young, youthful, American, born in the US except for Mamdani, but that they are changing the demographics of the Democratic Party. Do you feel that maybe that's what's challenging to them, like Hakeem Jeffries?
They're not. They're not changing. The demographics of the party have always been diverse. They're changing and trying to change the leadership of the party. The politicians, and you could see once you have somebody like Mamdani in a place like the mayor of New York City, he can help a lot of other candidates. A big help on the ground from this came from a very organized group called the Democratic Socialists of America, DSA. And DSA is trying to influence and work within the system. They're the Democratic Party has different organizations or different movements within the party because, again, it's a big movement. Just like the Republican Party also has big caucuses that are trying to influence it, whether, you've got the neocons, you've got the Christian, conservative Christians and the Christian Zionists, and you have the libertarians, and you have different parts, and every part is trying to have this tug of war of who's going to lead the party. And then, Trump came along and smashed all that. And he became the leader, basically, of the party. At the beginning, they didn't want Trump either because he's an outsider and he was unpredictable. And he's now, one of them. And in fact, for a lot of, many years, if not most, he was a Democrat, funding and supporting Democratic candidates. But because of the political system that we have, that once a politician wins office, means the voters chose that, and Mamdani is now in New York able to help all these other people that share his political views, which is, again, and it's basically the views of Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, kind of the godfather of this movement, or recent in modern times, that has actually motivated a lot of these people to run for office. It was Bernie Sanders who motivated AOC to run for office. She was, volunteering for his campaign. And the same thing with Mamdani. He was motivated by Bernie Sanders, followed him, followed his message and refined it. In some ways, got better in some parts of the message. And they continued to campaign with him. Bernie Sanders himself came and campaigned with these very same people that won. And this is the Bernie Sanders part of the Democratic Party, which he identifies as a democratic socialist. And he's, been butting heads with the Democrats, even though he's an independent. When he runs for president, he runs as a Democrat, and the Democratic Party establishment fears him and thinks he's this kind of, outsider, and they rigged it against him in 2016. I was a delegate for Bernie Sanders in 2016 and went to the convention in Philadelphia. And we remember what happened.
How did you become a delegate? In case somebody is listening?
The Democratic, you can go to the Democratic Party website to find out how to become a delegate. But basically, there is during the election year, early on during the presidential election year, they have a window where you could submit, basically file paperwork nominating yourself or saying that you want to be a delegate. And then you'll be added, if you qualify and meet the criteria, then you're added to a slate. And then they have a day where people go vote within the party. Any Democrat can go vote for the delegates that they want. And I put my name there and, asked people to go vote for me. So they went and voted, and that's how I became a delegate. And I was a delegate for Bernie Sanders. You have to basically identify which candidate you want to be a delegate for. Mm-hmm. And depending on the percentage that they want in the state is how they allocate the delegates. Forgot the number of delegates that Florida gets for a presidential candidate. But again, that year, a lot of people know this, and it's documented, that the Democratic Party leadership and establishment somehow worked against Bernie Sanders till that he's defeated, and they rigged it in favor of Hillary Clinton. And Bernie Sanders, because he's a nice guy, he eventually caved in and supported and worked hard for to get Hillary Clinton to win. And there was a shock that mm-hmm. Trump beat her. Some people though predicted that would happen. And again, he ran again in 2020. And again, somehow there was some rigging going on where, dropped out, and, they rigged it for Biden. And we saw how that ended up. So people since 2016, since before 2016, since even Occupy Wall Street, there's been this trend within the Democratic Party that they're fed up with the establishment. And they want outsiders, that they recognize that the democratic system is rigged for the oligarchs and for the establishment. And when Bernie Sanders came along with that message, a lot of people, including people that were part of Occupy Wall Street, jumped in and supported Bernie Sanders, trying to work within the system to overcome all of that. And eventually the establishment, because they have the process and the rules committees and all these things rigged in a way that it's very difficult for outsiders to come in and to make that impact. It takes a really, really long time. And people, and that's why I believe that Trump won in 2016, because they no longer they didn't want an establishment Democrat. They didn't want an establishment Republican. They wanted somebody from the outside. Trump, that's why he started saying and criticizing his own party and own leadership. And that's why people, of course he didn't get the majority, but that's why even people wanted to go that route. And that's why they went against Hillary Clinton. They didn't want more of the same establishment, politicians. And Biden, when he won in 2020, I think a lot of people agree on this, that was not actually.
Ahmed, your mic, you're being...
Oh, okay. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you were talking. Actually, I'm looking...
No, I was just talking about things that people already know, but the point that even Biden won in 2020 was not that he somehow defeated Trump because of ideas. It was just that he was not Trump. And people were freaked out because of the COVID and other things and the economy. Then Trump won again. So people want outsiders. And I believe if it was, Bernie Sanders in 2016, he would have won. So again, these are the errors of the Bernie Sanders movement. AOC Mamdani, others. These are Democrat socialists that think that the party itself needs to change and no longer, is beholden and working for the billionaire class and the oligarchs.
I'm looking at the Associated Press ticker, and they are looking at the key races. It seems like it was 50-50. For instance, in New York, District 21, a GOP won. South Carolina, Republican. South Carolina, then a District 1 Democrat. Utah, District 1 a Democrat. Then Utah, District 3 a GOP. South Carolina governor.
Samar, I would just say that because these are primaries. So even though if a GOP won, that means GOP won that primary. They didn't win the general election yet.
Yeah.
There's still going to be a general election.
Yeah, because it still looks like 50-50, even with these mini elections. And that's what I was going to ask you about the elections in November, if you have any prediction. If you are in the prediction market.
I mean, I'm not in the prediction. I'm not in the prediction, but obviously the momentum. I mean, here's the thing. The momentum is with, especially the Democratic Socialists. If you are a Democrat that is not, beholden and is, you're more independent, that's popular. But definitely people are kind of fed up with what Trump is doing. So it's expected that Democrats will win the House. And that's why, Trump and the Republicans are trying to change the voting districts. So, before the election, and they're meeting some resistance. Some places it's happening. They're trying to rig it. Normally, these redistricting, they don't happen except every 10 years after a census. And now they're trying to do it in the middle by changing the districts again. And basically eliminating some of these black districts that will always vote Democrat. Meaning, when I say black districts, I mean black majority districts that are for sure going to, elect a Democrat candidate or politician. And that happened in Florida. So there was redistricting in Florida itself, and they think by doing that redistricting that would eliminate, that would add some additional Republicans. So they're not playing fair, and all of these things are showing the fragility and the loopholes within the system that make it undemocratic.
Ahmed, we have like 7 minutes to go, and one of the things that popped up on my X feed yesterday was this statement by Tucker Carlson, and I really don't know what to make of it. But he was being interviewed, and he tells this lady, I really don't know Sky News. Yes, he was with Sky News, and he says, and I'm quoting here, Ahmed, and I want to see your reaction to this. Many times I said on television, the problem is Islam. The problem is Muslims. They all want to kill us. They're all crazy. They're all in this lunatic suicide cult created by Muhammad in the 7th century. And I believed that. I was hysterical. I believed that. No, that's not true. Nothing about that is true, but I believed it. I don't know how to react to it, because in Arabic,
who said that?
Tucker Carlson in an interview with Sky News on the 25th. What is today? Yes, today. Sky News.
Oh,
it's British.
But he's saying that he once believed those things.
Yeah.
He no longer believes them.
Yeah. But after what?
That was not. Yeah, I mean,
remember his rhetoric leading to the Iraq War and.
But I mean, the point is, I'm not in favor of Tucker Carlson, but now at least he's actually going out and trying to correct it by saying, I used to believe that and I was wrong. So even though, like we said this before, and I'm not again a fan or even support or anything for Marjorie Taylor Greene. She had crazy ideas. But when she's wrong about certain things, she had some integrity left. to quit the party and saying, I'm not going to be part of this anymore. Imagine when someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene has more integrity than a Chuck Schumer, that when she sees a genocide happening, calls it a genocide. Again, this is why Gaza is such a clear test and a litmus test. Mm-hmm. It's so obvious. It's so clear as like night and day what happened there. And if you come around and you even, hesitate to call it a genocide and try to, find, linguistic gymnastics to try to explain something so you don't say it is a genocide or acknowledge Israel's crimes, then you're not a person of integrity. You can't be trusted on anything else if you can't be trusted on the obvious. So when somebody comes along, and if I don't agree with them, and I don't agree with almost, most of the things that Marjorie Taylor Greene stands for, but I agree with her that, that it was a genocide, and she gets that right. Well, and then she was forced, or she had to, or she resigned from the party. Again, not praising her, saying she's great, but that is more integrity. So the fact that Tucker Carlson and even Megyn Kelly, they were some of the biggest Islamophobes in the country, and they were a mouthpiece for Islamophobia and hatred against our community. And at Fox News that they worked for helped, for 2 or 3 decades, have been brainwashing Americans against Islam and freaking people out and painting us as terrorists and all types of false things. Yes, they contribute to that, and they led that. But now they're waking up and saying, oh wow, we've been fed all these things and we were misled. I don't know if they came out outright and apologized for it yet, but at least there's that process. And now we have evidence. They themselves are saying, hey, we were fooled. We thought Israel was a victim all along. And that's how powerful their propaganda is. This is how powerful it is. And it's not any type of conspiracy theory. It's not any type of anti-Semitism, Israel is not Judaism. Israel is not Judaism. As much as they've been trying to tie the two together, it is not. Israel is a colonial settler state that's built on what's called a Zionist ideology that has nothing to do with Judaism. Judaism is a religion from God for a people. It's established. In fact, as Muslims, we have to honor, respect it, and protect it. And Jewish places of worship have been protected for centuries by Muslims. Mm-hmm. Before Israel, before 1948, who was ruling all those lands for a millennia, for 1,000 years, or over 1,000? Who was ruling? It was the Muslims.
1,400 years.
Yeah, 1,400 years. But I'm saying the whole thing, because it expanded over 1,000 years, or 1,200, 1,300 years. Christian churches and Jewish synagogues for over 1,000 years protected by Muslims for all that time, and even rebuilt by Muslims for the Jewish and Christian communities. But within a few years, Israel destroyed so many churches. It's unbelievable. So, history is proof of who's protecting religion and religious minorities and who's not. And as recent as the Holocaust, there's so much evidence of Muslim communities in Europe and in North Africa that protected and hid Jewish people from the Nazis so they are not persecuted. This is real stuff. This is not just rhetoric. These are facts that happened. So this is not some sort of anti-Judaism or anti-Semitism. These are lies. Israel is just trying to use that so they can continue their occupation, their ethnic cleansing, and their genocide.
I wish people would go to Arab countries like in Egypt and see the one of the oldest, most beautiful synagogue, which is near the church and near a very Islamic area. All of these people existed wonderfully. Ahmed, we're running out of time. Thank you for being on True Talk, Ahmed. It's been a while since I've been in the station since the fundraising, but thanks to all our listeners, and thank you for supporting WMNF, and keep WMNF in your pocketbooks always to preserve this freedom of speech. Ahmed, inshallah, we see you next week.
Thank you, Samar. Take care.
Okay. This was True Talk on WMNF 88.5 FM. And in a few seconds, I'm going to be playing the scoop. And this is WMNF Tampa. The scoop is coming your way now.